What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Susan Groeneveld, and she runs WS, which is simply ws.com, and Sylvester.ai, which we'll talk about. And Susan, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. And, it's an interesting one. Jason Swank is always a good episode. I actually had him on twice. He built up his agency to over 8 figures and sold it, talks about that journey. And then he started buying up agencies and talks about the kind of the agency space, the business space, the valuation space. So that was an interesting one. Todd Taskey is another one where he actually pairs private equity with agencies. So he actually helps sell agencies. He's got the Second Bite podcast. So he finds sometimes with private equity, people make more on their second bite than they do on the first because they sell it and the private equity sells again. So that, he actually has people on talking of their journeys of selling their agencies. So it's a really interesting episode, and he's pretty candid individual. Kevin Hurrigan, Susan, this is also a really good one, of Spinutech, is an agency since 1995. So he just talks about the evolution of just the internet business and the agency space there. And we were talking before we hit record about how it's changed even the past year, let alone the past couple decades. So those are all awesome. Check them out. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships. And how do we do that? We actually do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, the accountability, and the full execution. Susan, we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background and make it look easy for the host and the company so they can create amazing relationships, create great content, but run their business. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. I'm excited to introduce Susan Groeneveld, and she's the founder of WS, which is simply WS, and Sylvester.ai. And WS is an agency that helps agriculture and animal health companies. She has over 20 years of entrepreneurial experience. She's co-founded and led ventures in agriculture and pet care sectors such as Cat Healthy, which is a program that improves the quality of life for cats and their owners. She also started Sylvester.ai, which is a platform that uses data and machine learning to predict and prevent health issues in pets. And obviously, WS is the marketing agency that helps large size companies grow with customer-centric and data-driven strategies. And Sylvester was birthed out of the work at WS. So, Susan, thanks for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure. I've enjoyed our conversation so far, and we weren't even recording. So looking forward to it.
Me too. I just start off with WS and what you do. And if you're listening to the audio version, there is a video version, and I'm going to share Susan's site. It's beautiful looking, and we'll kind of hear from her what they do.
Thanks so much. So WS, we created and started this agency actually back in 2003. So we've been doing this for some time, but where we really focus is in agriculture and in animal health. And I was saying earlier that a lot of the same science that works in fields actually also works for killing fleas or has a business model for animal health and human health. So we connect with a lot of the multinationals that work in these spaces and also a lot of the startups in agriculture. And agriculture now is starting to be a bit much bigger deal than it used to be. So this has been really rewarding work. We're right across North America, and we really focus in strategy. And we have people from Deloitte that work with us, and we really think about business models before we get to the go-to-market and the marketing. And so that's a really key differentiator for us. is we really understand what ROI looks like, and we focus on the outcome versus just talking about activity and sell sheets and such.
Susan, agriculture is not new to you. You actually grew up on a farm. What was it like growing up on the farm?
You know, well, until I was in grade 2, I thought I'd be a horse when I grew up. And so I was pretty gutted when my cousin told me that wasn't going to happen. So I thought, okay, I have to get my act together. And so I went to university and got a science background, actually a degree in agriculture. And then I understood from who I was that marketing was a big part of it, being in the science-based area, because we talk about the science and we tend to get really granular, but it has to solve problems for people. And farming is based on necessity is the motherhood of invention. And so it really built an entrepreneurial approach because we watched every day people ahead of us generationally fixing things all the time, problem solving and getting it done and scaling and being involved in something really big business, but being really authentic about it. So it was a pretty big deal for me to be on the farm.
What was it like growing up? I always meet people if they are, grew up on a farm. They're some of the hardest working people I know. What did that look like growing up? Were you waking up early? What did you have to actually participate in?
Oh, yes. I was, so it was a beef operation. So we weren't like, dairy people where they had to get up and like 5 a.m., 5 p.m., that kind of thing.
When I went to Wisconsin, there are lots of dairy people.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it. Yeah, that is next level. That is next level discipline. But I think the big thing is circle of life. So early on, right, I saw things not always survive, right? Whether it was a crop or an animal. We had people situations, right, where there was, incidents. It was a big operation that I was a part of. And I think what struck me was how much we tapped into people and that authenticity, because we knew that this was fleeting, right? Like we're very mindful of seasons when you grow up.
What did you see? Did you ever see births of things or what?
Yeah. I remember going to see my first cesarean with my dad. The veterinarian came and I watched a cesarean. And
wow. How old were you?
8. Like this is.
Did you have nightmares? I feel like if I showed that to my kids, they'd be like waking up in the middle of the night.
Here's the thing, when it's part of your family dynamic, you look to your elders and you see how they handle it, and that's how you handle it. And so, it was very respectful. We treated the animals with the utmost respect. There's always pain management on board, but that animal was going to die if we didn't have that calf removed, right? And that was actually, if there's a C-section, it's poor planning, right? Because the mating wasn't right. So those animals couldn't handle it. So there's always learnings, right? There's lots of pivoting in agriculture. So no, I didn't have nightmares as a kid. I was off, like red meat for a while was a little rough. Because when you've seen the inside, it's like, okay.
Yeah. Well, also, I don't know if you get attached to them, but you name them and then, do you want to eat them? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting, right? You realize, right, that there's some really hard lessons too in agriculture, but at the end of it, none of us are getting out of this alive. So what is our purpose? And I think that's really what gets ingrained as a kid on the farm is that, that chicken lives or doesn't live, or that kitten doesn't live or lives, or the dog has something, or somebody accidentally runs over the pet dog. Like these things happen. It's not intentional, but it's resilience. It's understanding that there's a purpose. And so what was that purpose before that incident? And that's really framed up my entrepreneurial approach is like, why are we doing this? Like, what is the outcome? And so that was really, everything goes back to your childhood, in terms of those conversations.
One thing that's really interesting about you to me, I heard you talk about mindset before, and mindset in a business mindset on the farm, and maybe putting limitations on your mindset from a money perspective.
Right.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, and this is interesting because I think it's about you come into the world with your family's point of view, and then you work your whole life either liking that or running away from it. And I was fortunate or unfortunate enough to work or to be in a family that came, the first people that started the farm came, my great grandfather came in the 1800s, and he started with horses and big Clydesdales, right, to help other people farm. And he sold his horses and did really well. And then, you know what happened around the turn of the century, 1908? Things with wheels came. And all of a sudden, overnight, there was no market for horses. There was no market. His business model was completely eradicated. And I might add, when he was raising horses, he'd sell it to other farmers. They'd sell horses to other farmers. Half of the crops that were grown were to feed the horses. So it was like an incredibly inefficient system with horses, but that's how people made a living, right? And so when the tractor came, they had to pivot to a new business model. And, you know, in their case, it was to cattle. But I use that analogy in business today, right? And that's actually what attracted me to marketing, even though I have a science background, is I didn't want to get surprised. I wanted to be ready for the pivot. And the irony is I am surprised every day. Every day I am surprised. So my rationale didn't really hold true, but it's kept me really open-minded and curious. And I think that's actually like a key attribute to success, is just being okay with looking around the corner and not always being right, and being able to see opportunity where other people just see a problem.
Really interesting. Yeah, the early pivot from horse to
Right?
wheels.
One of the first, it was, you know, we still say in agriculture today, that was one of the most profound shifts in the revolution and evolution of agriculture, was the tractor. So what is it today?
Talk about starting your agency. Because you started off with a bang, I believe. But what made you start in the first place?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I didn't even know marketing existed when I did my science degree. I didn't even know that, this was in the 90s. And what really attracted me to it was the storytelling involved, in terms of telling a science-based story in marketing, not just marketing for, what you can get away with kind of thing, but science-based. But apparently, when I was interviewing to work in agencies, I didn't actually get picked for one agency that I thought I was a slam dunk for. And so I ran into someone a little bit later on in my life, and I said, why didn't I get that job? And she said, well, in the interview, you said you wanted to start an agency. I have no recollection of actually saying that. I don't remember saying that, but I was like, oh yeah, in hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have led with that. It's probably okay today, but maybe then I shouldn't have. So I think I always thought of it like it was mine. And even when I worked in other agencies, I thought of it like I have nothing to lose. So I always thought it was mine to take, in terms of treating the work that I did as part of the ownership. So I was the petulant employee that was at the door of all of the owners saying, hey, I think we should do this. Hey, what about this? What about if we do this or this? And they loved me for it.
You took ownership.
So I took ownership. Ironically, when we started our own business, I actually went blind to how to do a lot of that, because I was too invested from an ownership point of view. So some of the people I still value the most in my career are the people that can see the holes, because I've gone like ownership blind, because you've just got too many other things you're worried about, and you kind of lose the forest for the trees. So starting it was nerve-wracking. I think we started with a loan. My husband and I started with a loan of $30,000. And we just thought that was horrible. I had a $2,000 budget to buy a table and chairs and get a space. But we did have a client, a significant $1 million client, that was interested in working with us. And so we knew if we got it right, then we'd be okay. I do have to say though, we started the company, we landed that business 7 months later. So we started the company with a client in mind. But, these multinationals, they're 90 days payment terms. And so our credit lines were extended, we'd hired people, that first Christmas, I remember we had small children and, we were somewhere at a water park slide place. And Jeff, my husband, and I were talking about, have they paid yet? Have they paid yet? Because our credit line was due and they promised it was in the mail and it hadn't showed up. And it was a check for $300,000. These are the things that you look back at and you laugh about. But during that, you don't know you don't know up from down, right?
It's not funny at the time.
It's not funny at the time. But, that's just that grit. That's just that grit. You got to keep going.
Was there, I imagine there was some previous relationship there that you had with them, because it's not easy. I mean, general to land a, multi-7-figure or 7-figure deal with a company. Especially off the bat.
Yeah. And, that came through, I'd worked in agencies for over 8 years and I do, I'm a big fan of like put in the time and put in the grind and learn, I know we change more now in our careers, but I would really encourage, if you find a good gig, put in the time, because if you've got your end in mind, you're going to learn a lot through that. So through that, I was building, both of us were building really solid relationships, but this opportunity came through a merger and acquisition. So people had to divest products and other people were picking up the products. And I actually had people that were helping me behind the scenes and I didn't even know it. And so that would be my other takeaway is when you put in the time with people and you build those solid relationships, they will help you to the next. So, good impression, but really respecting people that have come ahead of you and really spending time with mentors, they will actually open doors. And that's exactly what happened for us.
So Susan, the initial company, when you first started the company, what were the services that you were offering? And I want to just maybe hear about how they evolved over time, because right off the bat. So what were the services at that time?
And in 2003, so we were still saying, fully integrated. And so we did soup to nuts. I came in from a PR point of view, but I also did strategy work. So because I really like business model thinking. And that's where I would tend to go, is solve that bigger problem. And then the execution, I needed to hand that off. So we still said we were fully integrated. So we did advertising, TV, radio. We did some web. This is 2003. So we were open to website, doing web work. And again, right, that curious nature, I'd spend a lot of time in my previous agency on the website digital side because no one else wanted to do it. If you can imagine, right? Like this was just like no one else thought it was going to be this big a deal. And so we really focused on the digital and we embraced it. And the other thing that we did when we built this company is we didn't pick people out of agriculture to come join us. Which was the default, you keep your client happy because you're both like-minded and, you both came from a farm. We actually brought in people that were digital to agriculture. And that was no small feat, by the way. But now everybody wants in. Back then, everyone's like, why do we want to work with people, in agriculture that, it's kind of boring. And we're like, it's super not boring. But we really worked hard to bring in experts from outside of our own networks. And that set us apart from everybody else in the space because it was a real old boys club in agriculture at that time.
Probably still is in a lot of respects, I imagine. Probably
is. It is. We've actually, as a company, we've really stood for DEI. As a woman, I'm a co-founder with my husband, but as a woman founder, I value outside thinking and collaboration above everything. And so the more diverse, the better. And so we want to bring that to agriculture. And it's interesting because a lot of the companies are still held by, a certain type of industry. Agriculture predominantly has been white, male. But now we're seeing this whole new group of people coming that have diversity all over the place. And we're the agency to embrace it. It's a really big mandate for us to bring that to agriculture. It's only going to make it better and more relevant.
I want to talk about some milestone. I mean, that's a huge milestone right off the bat with the first client, but talk about the hiring piece. Who do you decide to hire in the beginning as you're prepping for the client that doesn't show up 7 months until 7 months?
So this is a really good question, and I'm so glad you asked it. So traditional agencies, and so I'm just going to say it the way I feel it. Traditional agencies, we make money based on fees per hour, like a lawyer or an accountant. That is an incredibly broken model, in my opinion, because then you're getting paid for inefficiency. So I think that was a good idea, like maybe in the 1800s when everyone didn't think much about hours and value of time. Now, this is like the worst way to do business, in my opinion. And so we said early on, we're going to build a team and we want to scale, but we want to scale to what the client needs, not to who we have on staff. And so we're going to embrace freelancers. We're going to embrace pivots. We're going to embrace change. And we want to find the right people at the right time, rather than building out a stable, because in that traditional hourly model, you hire people and then you need to get them paid for. And so guess what? You've hired a bunch of print people or a bunch of web people, and you have to make sure they get paid. So guess what you're going to tell the client they need?
A website or whatever,
right?
Whatever it is. Yeah.
Right. So you've completely forgot about why you're doing the work, because you're trying to keep the client happy in air quotes, but you're pushing your agenda on them because that's what you have. So we broke that model right off the hop and said, we're not going to be that. We're going to be agnostic. And in fact, in the early years, we did not offer media because we did not want the cash flow of media to support the creative that we were doing. We wanted the creative to be good enough to stand on its own, versus most companies that have a media arm, that cash flows is actually what's paying for the business. So we've brought media in. We did that in 2017 because we want the data, because the data now is driving a lot of the decision making. And so we brought the media in, but not to be a cash cow, but to tell us what actually people are doing with a certain product or service. So at the beginning, getting the right people was a lot of contract people, but we built contract based on people that we'd like to scale with. And then we had tipping points of when it was right to bring in more people. So this group that you see here, that's our core. We can't live without them. But beyond this, we have, I think our freelancer list has over 100 freelancers. And as you know now, post-COVID, this has become even more accessible. So our systems have to be very tight to be able to bring in contractors, but our clients have no problem because it's more cost efficient for them. So culture's super important though, so that the freelancers want to work with us, right? So we pay them on time, we pay them, ahead of time. Those have all been kinks that we've worked out since the beginning too.
Who was the original hires, or what positions rather?
So our original hire was actually a bookkeeper because both Jeff and I didn't, we needed like say bookkeeper slash office manager, somebody that was just like making sure that we were paying our bills and getting all that done. That was our very first hire. And then after that, we brought in client service people that could be, if you want to call them customer success from a digital point of view, but people that were making sure the client was getting what they're needing. And then after that, we started to build out the creative team, right, in terms of execution. And we've always gone back and forth about, do you hire a junior and train them, or do you hire a senior and build down? And after 20 some years of this, I would say always hire up, meaning hire a senior that wants to get their hands dirty and that really loves the work. And I think that's one of the things that's really stood out for us is the people that work with us, they're coming to us because they really want to touch the work still. So we're we're getting to work with really high-end people across North America, because if they've had a bigger agency experience, they've been burnt out in the, it's death by 1,000 butter knife cuts, right? So we can really attract a really strong talent pool that way.
Are there any tips that you have for vetting contractors? Because obviously, like you said, you have specific systems and process to make sure to maintain that quality across, no matter if you have to scale up or down, if you get a big client. What are some ways you've vetted contractors that's been helpful?
Yeah. So I'm going to start actually with the agency versus the people. You can find the right people to do the right work, but if you don't know what you want them to do, or you don't have a proper brief for them, it's a fail. You're not going to get what you want, and it's not the person's fault. So you have to have your homework done. You have to have, decent timelines. You have to give these people a shot. But we do a lot of word of mouth now. We've gotten to a point now where it's people through our network. And so if you're doing good work, and people like you, then we'll probably find you. But we'll go out and we'll look on LinkedIn. We'll look at other competitors in the space, like our clients' competitors, and who's doing writing for them. We have our own people, quite frankly, that are they're asked to do freelance now all the time, right? And they will usually decline, like they're not about it. But it's become such a fluid space that if you're doing good work, people will find you. But we'll hone in on what we really need. The biggest fault for freelancers is not the freelancers' problem, but the companies, where the project started out one way and then it turned into something else, and they weren't given the right information. And then it's just easy to blame the freelancer. And that's really not usually the case.
How do you decide, your core team? What's kind of the responsibility of the core team that's not really changing?
Yeah. So we look at that, and it's like, what can we not afford to freelance is the way to look at it, right? Like, what can we not afford to freelance? So really strong creative direction strategy. Creative strategy, really strong strategy, in terms of, we're working with people that are like, 30 years in strategy and account planning. Account service, the senior people in account service, this has changed since COVID, by the way. We used to think that all account people had to be full-time, and now it's really the senior people. So your core is the brains, and they have to be able to manage people and understand when they need freelance. And so the way our structure is, we've got our digital. When I say creative, digital is part of creative. Like, it's the head of our creative team is actually a digital expert, not a design expert. And we've done that on purpose to keep it true to digital. But skill sets are merging now, and things are commoditizing. So it's really we have a core in creative, we have a core in content, digital is part of creative, and then we have a core in account service. And then everything after that, like lead gen, we need experts in that, but we actually find that we can outsource that quite easily in lead gen, and then bring it back to our core that's like digital lead.
So you start off, you get an amazing client off the bat. What was the next major milestone with WS?
So this is a happy story for me, because the first one was great, but it also, as an entrepreneur, is terrifying. So, you've got a gorilla, and if the gorilla decides to like pack it up, then you're nowhere. So it's much better to have like 3 orangutans versus 1 gorilla, right? So our next orangutan, I'll say, we actually worked quite hard at this. It was again through networks, and it was an animal health company. So it was a nice complement. It was non-competing with our first client, but it was also a significant budget that came in, and that came in 2000. That came in 4 years after. our first, and I might add, I had another baby in between, which
Wow.
which was totally not part of the equation, but we're grateful for the journey. So we had a lot going on. We have 3 kids. But anyways, that being said, that was Bayer Animal Health came to the table, and I'd had relationships, and
That seems like more of a gorilla than an orangutan.
Right? They were big. Well, they came in, well, I mean, however you want to frame it, right? But they came to us because we sent them a Christmas card. And they said, "Oh, we wondered where you went. That's fantastic. We should talk." And they brought us in for a project.
Physical mail works.
Physical mail works. Like it's about the relationship, right? And Garth Graham, and I'll give him a big shout out, was our client there. And he said, "Yeah, no." He says, "I want you to come and help me with this product. I don't know what to do with this product." So we went in and we did some facilitating to get their team on board from a strategy point of view, because they weren't. By the end of it, I'd pulled the head of the company aside and I said, "I don't think you're going to hit your numbers with this product." And he said, "You know what? It's okay. We're the last country to get it registered. We know what we're doing, and it's okay." And I said, "Okay." So we left and we thought we did a terrible job because we didn't help our Garth with what his agenda was in terms of getting, if anything, it showed how discordant everything was. And he called after and he said, "You know what?" He says, "We're going to consolidate agencies. We want you to pitch for it. And, let's go." So we did the pitch and we won the business, and we started it thinking it would be about $500,000 in billings. And at its height, it was almost 2 million in billings.
Wow. So what were you doing for them? What were some of the things?
Again, we did all the brand positioning for their products. We did all the advertising. We did TV and radio. Our TV, it was a beautiful, beautiful TV spots, and multi-million-dollar media buys with that. And then we did the clinic advertising. So they sell through vet clinics. So then we'd have to, build tools for that. We also introduced some of our first digital tools to them. And again, this was a really burgeoning time where a lot of product people were promising they could do things. And then when they got executed, it was like, it was a startup within an agency, like we know we have to do this stuff, but, if I think about it, right, there's pivots going on all the time through marketing because we got to keep changing, right? But there's some things that worked and didn't work. I can remember being in client meetings and, we're launching it to the sales team. There's 250 people in the room and they're trying to get the Wi-Fi to work and the site won't come up and they're just like banging on the keyboard. And I'm thinking, oh, where's my team? Why isn't it working? It's just, horrifying. But, when you have good relationships with your clients, you can work through all of that, right? If you're not in a transactional relationship, you can actually really do good marketing. So
what were some of the digital tools that you were using at that time?
Oh my God. So we hired in our core, web dev people, right? So we were building things on iPads. They were using I don't even know what they were using for the coding. We were trying to cherry pick people out of like digital only agencies. And then you start to go, oh my God, this whole thing's a bit of a cluster cuss. Like nobody's got this figured out, but everybody's promising to their clients they've got it like nailed down. And so I can't even remember some of the early, like they would be able to tell you the coding, but I can tell you from the client interface wasn't super awesome because we'd make promises. We had a company that we did 150 different events across North America with them in rural, agriculture. It was farm equipment. What could go wrong? What
kind of events? Like what would an event look like?
We called it the Bums and Seats Tour, but it was demoing tractors. So this was it's called Versatile. It was a company. They have confident critical technology, meaning it's not a John Deere. but it'll last forever. But it doesn't have all the bells and whistles at that time. And so we knew that if we could get people into the seat of the tractor, they'd buy it. But just looking at it, they're not going to buy it. So these events, we templated a road show where we'd roll in pre-qualified people, get them into the tractor, get them doing a demo, and then we helped them sell over $200 million worth of equipment.
Wow.
Yeah, because
how did you get those people there? Like, what was, I mean, obviously, like, hey, come sit in this tractor, right? It's not that compelling. What were you doing to market to get them? And I'm sure they're traveling, you know, we're talking rural, right? So it's not like I'm in Chicago, I'm driving like 10 minutes. They're probably driving for an hour or more. Who knows?
No, for sure. And I mean, okay, there's a few things, right, about farming. And these are generally really high trust people, right? And they're going to be helpful. But you need to add value to them, right? So we went out ahead of the event, right? And we pre-qualified. So we asked them to sign up. So we did advertising, right? And we really, the creative was like, it looked like you were going to like a Taylor Swift concert. It's best analogy, right? Like we called it like, not the Eras tour, but like we had different names for the different times. And it was like, we're stopping here, and we were building that momentum. We did t-shirts with all the stops on the back, like you had gone to a concert. And so we really built out, you know, it was like the Iron Tour, or like things that really were captivating to a farmer. So they didn't want to miss out on that. Plus they knew that they'd have friends going. So you know,
it's like a kind of a networking community feel to it.
And this is usually how agriculture works, right? Is that because they're so closely knitted, this is usually how it works. But the difference that we did was we didn't want everybody's family to be there for the steak on a piece of bread. We wanted people that were pre-qualified to buy. So we built out all their data. And I mean, now we do this all the time, right? But back then we actually built out the data, and we could see that this person had so many acres of land. We had them answer information ahead of time. And then we actually put them in as like they had a time to be in the seat. And so we literally put a bum in the seat to have them drive the tractor. And it was so successful that this company actually, when they brought on new people to sell their product, like new distributors, that they actually mandated they have to have one of these events when they come into the fold for that company, because they could see how easy it was to sell them.
I mean, do it what works, right? Rinse and repeat. But I love it's like it's a community event. People want to see their friends. Also, you were delivering value. You were kind of doing a lot of research ahead of time, so you kind of knew how this would benefit them, not just like anyone, but it actually would benefit them because of that research. I'm going to pull up your site for a second because I'd love to hear more about a few that kind of stuck out to me. So if you're listening to the audio, we're on simplyws.com. I'm on the work section. Some beautiful imagery here, but one that sticks out is this call to farms .ca. Talk about the image for a second, and what did you do with Call to Farms?
Yeah, so this was this gives me goosebumps actually, and this was pre-COVID. I'm going to say this was pre-COVID, but this was when there was a lot of tension between agriculture, GMOs, and consumers. So do you remember that time when we really hated all the big multinationals? I know we still do, but this is the farmers were feeling like they were under weather because they felt like they had to defend the industry. And so this is actually a group it's in Canada, and it's called Canadian Outstanding Young Farmers. And this actually celebrates people between the ages of 18 and 39 that are coming into agriculture, and they're getting it done. They have to have 2/3 of their income being made off of the farm. And they're really the next generation of farmers. And so we wanted to create a campaign that really celebrated what they were doing. And this was speaking to the farmers themselves. And this gave just a bit of a Banksy feel they felt like they were under attack. And so we were going to bring it all together and really rally the farms together to say, hey, we can do this together. And we just need to help people know that we are well-intentioned. And, there's lots of us involved, and the farmers really have a heartbeat. And do you know that in research, farmers, the individual farmers now, and not because of this, but as part of the trend, they're actually more trusted than doctors to consumers. Like, we really are rooting for farmers as consumers, but there was this really high tension between the two. So we just wanted to really tap into that and let farmers know that this was a group that they could be a part of, to feel good about themselves, and that come together, high tide raises all boats.
So you kind of, you talk to the stakeholders and you come up with campaigns, and especially this imagery that we're looking at.
Yes, we came up with the imagery. I'd have to go back to the brief that we gave the team. We actually, when we briefed the creative team, we actually did it out away from, like, it wasn't just at a table, right? We went out into a field and, helped people understand how, this group kind of felt like they were under attack sometimes, right? And again, it's a very different vibe now, but when we did this work, it was really compelling. And farmers were a little sheepish about it too, because they didn't want to admit that they felt under attack. So it kind of...
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if racy is the right word, but it's pretty bold, right?
Yeah.
Talk about the work in Cat Healthy for a second.
Yeah, so Cat Healthy was, working in animal health companies. I spent 20 years talking to different companies about trying to help clinics sell their products. And one of the things that kept coming up was cats just really, there was no budgets for cat work, like the cat drugs. And
Why?
Because they don't go to the clinic. So they don't sell as much product. And then I thought, well, why? And it's because people don't like to take their cats to the clinic. Then we think about why. And it's like, I thought, maybe it's the carrier, like sticking a cat in a carrier. And then actually I started to understand it's because cats hide their pain. We don't even know that they're in trouble. And so I created a not-for-profit called Cat Healthy. Cat Healthy, then I did it with my co-founder was Liz O'Brien, who is a feline specialist in Calgary, in Canada, wonderful woman. And we brought together all the feline specialists in Canada to create protocols for cat care. And the multinationals then paid us to create those protocols and such. And this spin-off, this campaign that you just saw was with Royal Canin, one of our sponsors through Cat Healthy. And this is really interesting. This approach, cats are subtle, and so is the marketing. And this was about us proving out that how we talk to cat people are very different than how we talk to dog people. And so we had deep insights. Cats don't go to the dog park, right? We're on the internet. Cat owners think they know their cats best because the cats don't show pain. So how can we help people understand that their cats need their care? And so these were helping to bridge that. So this is award-winning throughout North America. And it was really about building community and driving higher trust for companies like Royal Canin by understanding cats and letting people know that they understand cats.
What was the original idea behind Cat Healthy? Because it seemed like it kind of took a life of its own.
It did take well said. It did. The idea, honestly, day one was for me to generate revenue through all of these different multinationals with the same vested interest. And I saw that Cat Healthy could be a way to get paid to do this work. At some point, though, one of the companies said, we want to own Cat Healthy. And Liz and I said, that's not going to work because you're just going to, it'll just become nothing, right? Because a company will get a hold of it and they'll bury it. It's just the way companies work. So we actually then spun it out and created a not-for-profit.
So originally it was for-profit.
Well, originally it was an idea. Cat Healthy was an idea. And then, so or it was just an idea. And we said, hey, let's bring a bunch of people together. And they wrote checks, which was amazing. And then year 2, we said, okay, let's incorporate as a not-for-profit so no one can touch the high-minded work and they can sponsor it. And that's been a very, very lucrative, it was a very good lucrative pathway. But what happened is the marketers keep changing in these companies. And so we felt like we'd have to go back in time and tell them about why it's harder to get this done for cats than dogs. And that actually led me to Sylvester.ai, thinking, how can we move faster for cats? Because it's not about education. Cat owners are well-intentioned, but this idea came out of the work of the agency and the not-for-profit, and knowing that we're still not doing enough for cats. And I have a whole elevator speech on this, but where we are today is this technology can take a picture of a cat's face on a phone and know if that cat's in pain or not, meaning we're helping the cat get to proper care. Almost none of the cat. Well, I gotta frame this right. A person that does end of life care, like euthanasia, that's all they do. They do 100,000 pets a month.
Wow! Holy cow!
Yeah, it's a thing.
A month? Jeez.
A month. Yeah, they have 300 veterinarians. They're based in the U.S. And because we have all these pets, right? They're not going to live as long as we are. We have to deal with this. Of the cats that they see, almost none of them have been to a vet in the year previous to euthanasia, meaning it's not because people don't want to take them. They just didn't even know it was that bad.
So it's almost too late at that point.
Yeah.
By the time they get to them, they realize they weren't identifying any signs, and then it's so far gone, or whatever is going on with them.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no, right? I mean, like everything, it's more nuanced, but there would be ways to help these cats live longer lives. There are more products coming for cats to help them live longer lives. We just don't know that they need them. So that's the whole impetus of this tech.
I mean, one of the themes too, especially with Cat Healthy 2, Susan, is partnerships, right? And you partner with Liz on that. This one also, you had a really expert strategic partner as well.
Yes, that's exactly right. So with this one, because this isn't my first, as an entrepreneur, a lot of ideas come out and in and out, right? And you see them. And the way I frame it up is like, if somebody else did this and it went really big, would I be okay? And I finally got to this one and I'm like, okay, I'm not okay. If this goes really big, I'm not going to be okay. And so I had an idea. I knew about pain scales that veterinarians were using, but I don't do AI and I have no, understanding of AI. And so I reached out to L2ML. They're a venture studio. University of Alberta is ranked number 3 in the world for data science. Who knew? The tech that beat Gary Kasparov came out of the University of Alberta when the chess player was beat. And so before we incorporated Sylvester, L2ML and ourselves said, okay, let's just see if there's something here. So we actually got data sets from feline specialists through Cat Healthy, and we applied the AI to their face. And we had over 96% accuracy in the first run of the data. And then we went, okay, there's something crazy good here. And so that's when we incorporated it. So they understood, L2ML understood VC, understands AI. Corey Jansen actually created Investopedia and sold it to Forbes. So he understood the business side. And so they were a crucially good early partner for us for this tech.
Talk about the business. And you can see here, because I first was researching you before WS actually came up, Sylvester. I'm like, what am I getting into with this interview? I'm talking about Cat AI, here. And
I know.
It's a kind of a fascinating pathway that's led you to several venture offshoots. But what did you see as the business side of Sylvester?
Yeah, it's a very good, very, very, very good point. And I think at the beginning, I thought direct to consumer, help a cat owner see that there's pain. They go to the vet gets more revenue, but we also get better care for these cats, right? So in our early
So it's like a free app? Is that how people
started
access
that
it?
way. Yeah. So Jeremy, we started that way because that's, I thought, would be a good pathway. So we started that way, and we had an MVP, and actually Wired UK found us and picked us up because, I mean, it's cats. And they wrote about us.
People love cat pictures, cat videos.
Oh my God. It's like the biggest thing on the internet, right? So Wired UK wrote about us. Reuters picked us up, and we had 54,000 downloads of our free app in 1 week. And so then we were like, okay, this is a big deal. This is a really big deal. So we actually did freemium model testing to subscription with cat owners during 22. And we had a decent conversion at 3%. But you know what I was doing with this tech was I was alerting people to a problem with their cat, and I wasn't giving them a solution. So it didn't feel great without having, and we could have like plugged in our own veterinarians and whatnot. But I thought, I think I'm going to pivot this company. I know that it's going to take a lot of capital to do marketing. And I mean, there's a big appetite with pet owners. But if I start with veterinary clinics, it's curated. And we know that the tech is accurate, because there's also a real danger with this tech for it to become novelty because it's cats. And so all my early investors now are veterinarians. And we're actually selling it through clinics for remote patient monitoring. And so we slowed it down. And this was actually a big learning for someone that has a marketing background. We tend to want to go fast and find the solution. We're paid to be bright. But I actually had to dial it right back, slow it right down. And there's a saying now that this is my mantra: slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So all those assumptions that we make at the beginning are all bad. And we make gut feelings on them, right? And so if we just slow it down and get some data, then we can actually build something that's scalable. And so that's what we're doing right now, selling through clinics, is we're building a scalable, repeatable revenue model that's going to really ensure our success. We're launched in Singapore. I have discussions in France to launch there this month. And we have several big conversations happening in the US and Canada with digital platforms, because now we're an API, we're not an app. So you won't find us on the Apple Store. Ask your veterinarian about the technology if you're interested in trying it, because that's how we're going to, bring it to market.
So will the vets then have a subscription they can use, that they will pay for, that they can use for their patients, can access to monitor like early detection for their cats? So it's more like a B2B model before it was kind of a B2C.
Yes. Yeah, we pivoted right into B2C. And B2C, the numbers were fantastic. But we wanted it to be more curated. And I'm not, access to care is a big deal. I have a lot of people saying, hey, we're in remote, areas. This would be amazing technology. So I want to do that as well. It's just I'm still in startup mode in terms of validating the business model, and then we'll get there.
Yeah, you have to make it sustainable because you have staff, you have people, and it's got to pay for itself at some point.
Yeah, and we've had, we have a lot of VCs interested. You can imagine there's animal health companies that are interested, and then there's AI companies that are interested. And so it's kind of, it's very frothy right now, but I'm learning a ton. And the other thing that I'm learning as a marketer is we say a lot of gobbledygook stuff in marketing that really is a waste of time. So I can actually now come back to WS and say, folks, let's stop with all like the 20-page decks. Like, let's just get to it. Let's make it about an outcome. Let's not prove that we're valuable. Let's show them that we're valuable. Let's show the ROI. Let's show the data. And so this journey of Sylvester has really flavored my approach to WS and to marketing. And it's landing really well, right? Because customers are like, thank God. In the old days in marketing, we assumed that the client had all the answers. and they did all the digital, they did all the insights, they had all the assumptions, they had all the research. And right now in marketing, nobody has all the answers. So we've got to work way more like partners and be very much a business partner, not just an activity partner, if we want to be successful.
Susan, I just want to be the first one to thank you. Thanks for sharing your journey and your stories and your lessons. Really fascinating. Everyone can check out simplyws.com to learn more. And if you are a vet, or maybe you take your cat to a vet, tell them about Sylvester.ai. And you can check that out on their website as well. Susan, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like $100 grand.